All right, welcome everyone. It's all an instance what we do and what we don't do. We just find ourselves into those moments. I feel that there is more to chance than perhaps we might ever be involved in thinking that there might be. So there is a notion of our mind to connect to things. We don't just hold them to be a discussion or a little sympathy is needed to bring them about. Usually, I find them to not just recognize myself or to be part of myself. They seem to hold a symbolic understanding. They just move on, growing. A type of contemplation is just done this way. I don't feel that there is so much more of an involvement to these things that might be necessary being said today. After all, I just hold on to my group of understandings and I put them together like memes, so really small units of ideas I got from talks I've been listening to and understanding and dissecting to get my own way of knowledge involved in it, way of knowledge involved in it. There is a simpler thing said about these. I held them so many times ago and there was chances that they were making me feel troubled. Nonsense was said, I remembered, about situations where we are all together and being more than just the resemblance of things we talk about. We're more than just the resemblance of that. We held our chances because they control our feelings. They don't just dissolve, they become. No more could have said that I did these workings before I understood that there was something wrong with how it was taken by us. We don't just connect to each other. No, we hold out, and while we hold out, we more or less see that there is a mystery with the way we are going about things. We don't just follow into a normal direction. We hold these things because they have, in their own sense, a bit of a grander dissolution to them. I felt that there was a need to protest to these. So I am talking now about making it a more making it more apparent. Where did I go wrong? I would say is was my first thinking thought that kind of got to me. They kind of got to me. I don't just hold an instance. I go with it. While in it, I let my mind revolve and I let it just see itself viewed in different perspectives. Now, I connect to these thoughts because they are no fault of my own. They become basically nothing before you try them to find their own dimensions. There is so much simpler said about this than I make it up to be. It's easier when we don't really go on and think about things we do. We hold them much more that way. I don't just hold them because I like them, I hold them because I find them to be better. After a year or so of going, I've been making my mind up about what I like, what I dislike. So much was said that I didn't intend. And I found out that by looking back at it and being more understood, I see there's reason in it because it's a longer process than I figured. There is a way for us to be understanding about what we like and what we have within us. There is a way for us to keep that in mind when subjectively knowing that there is a point of direction before there is a point of dissolution. There will always be that. And symbolism has that part involved in it. Many kinds of different symbolism. But when you're studying symbolism and you have a lot of symbolism in your life, the smaller kinds, the normal ones, that are the normal archetypical ones, like are you the master of your own story or are you following someone else's story and being a part of that one and finding that that's your place to sit at? That's symbolic in the smaller sense because there are archetypical knowledge about us and our dimensions of the being that don't really hold up to these small notions of interest. No, they are far grander in their sayings. They don't just depend on us, they are about us in ways that are unsaid too. And seeing these is difficult for the unrealized mind. It's about time that we kind of go on to it and be free from it. I don't find myself to simply hold these ideas because they are fun. No, I held them because they were necessary. And what's necessarily so is to be held furiously in fear of losing it. And move into contemplations, thinking about thinking. I started doing that around 2016, if not earlier. At first, I was quite confounded and I needed a reason to start and to understand. So I started making voice recordings of myself while I was walking, and I would talk at the same time about these things that were a mystery to myself, because I wanted to come to some kind of understanding of it. And I continued doing so, but and leaving it and getting into other areas of interest and then going back to it. And finally, I'm here where I find that it's better to get a better perspective of it and having the space to actually look at it by putting it here on YouTube. Because there's a chance that we are involved in more matters than we might recognize. And I find that there are other people, others for sure, that have similar interests, similar understandings of these things that might be fun and even more so necessary to be involved with, even without my own conclusions that will be coming from me continuing this journey will be helpful for anyone traveling the same path at one point or another. So there's a chance, perhaps, that I may sound a bit dissolved in my intentions, that I didn't begin this when it was 2016 when I was already recording. Uh, I begun this much later, began showing it much later. So what's revealed to me will be dissected in these talks. now and then because it's so much since then, so many years since then, that the fact of the matter is that going back towards all of it might be a little bit too boring to me, but I will be uploading and piece by piece I will be clearing out why I took the walks I took and where it took me, what I found out and how interesting it was for me and how it changed my life and the lives around me. Hopefully, you come to some kind of understanding in your own studies and your own notions about what there is and what there can be. So many words were said between us since then. The news has been running rampant, and we're at a different time period right now. Not much of a new era yet, but there's a lot of things changing, and we're coming to a new place of becoming than we used to be at. So I'm involved in this so much as we all are. And because of that, I feel like time is going to be the arbiter to tell us where we are and how we're going to be. Mike, a friend of mine, said to me once that there's a mystery within us, and that mystery should be taken carefully. Because if we look at it as if it's something we don't need to have in our life, then we'll do the false pretense of understanding by saying that we should just throw it away and find a place for something else where it was. And that something else might just be lacking. Surely it would be lacking. For no fact of my own can I hold up my own thoughts without understanding the mystery behind them too. The factors involved by others in my life, known people and unknown people that I just seem to be living with, seem to be seeing alongside. I don't hold up to many things of these without just thinking about them. No, I forget them most of the time. I seem to hike them to my own grievances, smaller ones and the large ones too. None that has been said yet by my own seeing. It's because it's not too real to find it. I happen to hold on to these things because they are better that way. It's so much more than I was first and foremost seeing. I meant to go alongside and nurture it slowly, so slow that I ask myself from time to time why it could be damaging to myself, to the view I have of myself. Now, I didn't begin anywhere else than with the protest of society and its being like anyone else did when they were young enough. I'm not much older and I still have discouraging matters to be said about society. I like society. I like how it is. But as everyone involved in it, we're all finding our problems. And I think the best way of coming to some kind of resolution is to be part of the conversation. So I've taken my chances to be so inclined. Where did I go? I went mostly to the forest. Forest is a place where there's peace and quiet and tranquility. You find yourself there, alone with your thoughts. And you come to this point where you have to ask yourself, is this really real? Is this really who I am? You hear them so profoundly said. There's no, there are no distractions. You can't just go there and pretend that what you're hearing about yourself and the life that you have and what you understand of society and our community, you can't pretend that you have no knowledge of it anymore, that there is no saying behind you. You can't pretend that you weren't involved in the miseries and sure the glories too. You can't pretend your involvement anymore. And with that fact becoming more clear, the longer times you spend in areas of where it's silent, you end up seeing so much clearer by the day that you're a factor and you're not really agreeing to that fact, but you can't do nothing else but agree. Now, I did, and I went there, and I still go because it's peaceful and being alone with your thoughts. It's a very it's a very good way of coming to an understanding of who we are and why we're these people and what we can do from then and there. So I hold myself in contemplation, not to withstand or lose, just to find. Today I find that I have been far too long without me doing this. I had let so much time go by not saying anything, whereas the rest of us are spending so much time actually being involved in a way that gives traction to the walk, leaves tracks that are necessarily left. Involve yourself into your community, the kind of community you have, and you shall see that there is point to these matters. You take miles to come to a place where you find that a lot has changed within you as well. Because the change is so slow. that you might not see it unless you take control of it. Being happy that way, happy to make part of yourself actually true and truer and truer so. Just true enough. No, I had no chance. I went and I went, therefore I was there. So I made my bearings clearer and I came to some kind of understanding. So I was involved in it and I dissolved that understanding. And then I did that again to come to the same effect. After a while, I understood that there may be no more lessons here. And I went to a different place, coming to the conclusion that my understanding was faulty. The place didn't matter, it was the events surrounding it that mattered, and the understanding surrounding it that mattered. I came to quiet my thoughts a lot so I could hear them clearer. Funnily said, yes. I came to quiet my thoughts so I could hear them more clearly. I was involved in making something happen. I didn't know why I was involved in that. So I wanted to be more analytical about it, using methods around me, reading authors that seem to know of this to some grand degree. And that was subject for me to come to conclusions that I found that I could be somewhat okay with because my curiosity never really stopped asking why don't I return to the forest where it's quiet, where I can hear my thoughts so clear and make my own divinings of what is going on instead of listening to others that seem to more fit their own lives than mine. I made it so close to me. While I go on about this, I found that I come to remember more the longer it goes. I come to just say what I held because it's less problematic. It would be problematic to not say. No more do I give this thought or attention. No more do I speak of this because there is a chance that if I spoke of it less than what I do, I will hold on to some notion and I will find that notion to not be enough. Asking myself to go on and disappearing into thoughts that are a little too long, only to fall into a protected sense of feeling where going and ongoing is just the same. There is no more things to be held here. They are just a part of the dialect. There seems to be thoughts appear apparent and some less so. I find that there is a discussion to be made somewhere too, And asking myself of that to come to that conclusion is nice. So I do find myself liking that nicety. And there is more to be said about listening to things where I go on and move, now holding these by myself. It's like going to a tropical island and thinking about things alone. No matter where that tropical island may be, you find yourself to come to conclusions, and that's usually enough for most of us. So I held myself to some degree, and I did so because it felt like the just thing to do. About now, I'm in a place where I have time to be free. I can break apart instances and see them for what they are, with more time involved into the matter than I used to be. I was involved with friends and escapism. It's so damaging to see oneself and not like what you see at first. So you make your own bed and you know you do. Where do you go then when you know this? Well, you can go no longer than further along the same lines, but with change being the forefront of your mind's guile. Let me not hasten too much. I ask, if I communicate this in a form of simplicity, there is somewhere in my mind I feel where that will help me to come to fast conclusions, to somehow know why I say the things that I say. Because hearing them proves to me what I do have to say and allows me to learn what more I can have to say. I come to understanding myself by being myself in this nature. So involved in thinking and being and finding fruition when that is more like my own thoughtful ideation. It's droplets of noise moving to its right place. I become an instrument to myself, a happening, one where I go on about the things that are fitting to me and find out why there are some mysteries within myself. Because there should be no more clarity than oneself. I went around thinking about that knowing yourself is what knowing is. And everything around us simply fit to this knowing. The difference between a subject and an object. There should be no much confusion about the subject, simply since you are who you are. Wherever you go, you don't lose yourself, you are staying as yourself most of the time, except for the times where you might have your attention so involved that you've come to some kind of trance state where you don't really find yourself within, only without, but not recognizing yourself without. You simply stay there, involved in the exterior, unknowing of what the exterior is, until you find yourself back where you've always been, within. No longer would you come to join the differences said by others. No longer would you move that into space. You held them because they were free. So you became part of it. You don't move to deny. You become because you are always here. You dissolve these seekings and gathering. You make it seem so much less. Find out why you do these things, and you may seem to simply conclude why discussions are lost. I don't just come to it. No, I move past it, through it. I feel it's growing on me, not denying me. It breaks piecemeal into discussions, smaller ones, ones that at first didn't seem to matter, but they're part of the whole. Why can't there be free understanding of symbolism? It is what these chilling ideas that we all have usually are about. Topics that we can find clarity with. I mean to say them because there is a distance to reach. So it matters to me. It matters to me to see what can I protect and what can I fall away from. Where do I go when I'm done? Other than further along. I'm thinking about these things daily in ways that I don't know because I might find my time occupied by other things that don't allow me to feel that I am here. So very here. So much so that it confounds me sometimes. There is a break in understanding, one where we go on about joking and listening to members of our community who say that they mean the things they say and find a way to trick you into believing so, not malignantly, just simply because of jest. You can hold on to your attention for as long as you want. The longer you hold it, the further along you seem to go, losing it. It should be held naturally, just by doing so, passively, almost as if you're not part of it. Feeling of euphoria you get is the director of if it's right or not. The act itself seems to move you away. Thinking about it can remind you to act too harshly. So welcome it. It is yours. It is ours. For in each one of us we find the attentive space to not matter other than with what we do and what we want and what we care about. It's freeing. I'm told there is a way to go about this to not reach into your mind and still find yourself there. I'm told there are ways to bring it about by simply breathing it into life. A way of meditation, it is said. I practice meditation. I allow myself to think that there is more to it than simply sitting. And by allowing myself to think that, I find it funny, I laugh. It's simpler to simply sit there and be. Be free from your mind. Be free within your mind. Be free no matter within or without. Freedom, notion, so very strongly said, so very strongly uttered, named so because we know more of it than we care to say. You wouldn't ask someone why they hold on to the freeing of their mind. You wouldn't ask them why that becomes part of who they are. No, you would simply say, be free. and stay so as long as you can. Because forever might seem far too long for an unfreed, untethered mind. So in meditation, I hold myself in place, sitting. Naturally, I do so by simply sitting. I would do more if I tried to sit in a different position, in yogic movements, exercising my will, bringing it about, troubling myself, and contorting myself into these different movements, remembering how it works, knowing that it might not. A remembrance comes to mind that I shouldn't be thinking, and I should capture my breath. Far too long do I go on, finding that I should quit. I've been going for too long, taking hold of too much, becoming so little, but still so much grander than I was. Simplicity itself, which is why it's so difficult to reach. We like the convolutions, the complex. It's almost like an assignment to us. It needs to be done. The more complex, the better.